Alright, Isabella, in this video I'm going to show you the unit circle in terms of how to derive it and how to get to each number, and then some ways to help you memorize where the numbers go in each angle. First, let's go over what a circle is. Essentially, a circle is a figure where the radius, all of these lines, are exactly the same length, right? Now when you're looking at a unit circle, the radius of every one of these is 1. Okay. What we're going to do is look at the upper left quadrant, that will be this one right here, and then see how to get to the numbers of each angle. When you're looking at the other quadrants, like these, they're all related to the first quadrant anyway. So here's our circle again. We're going to focus on that first quadrant, so I'm going to zoom in here. Remember, in the unit circle, the radius is 1, so that line will be 1, this line will be 1. We're going to count the point on the very right side as 0 degrees. Okay? Which means that at 0 degrees, you only have the x-axis. This point would be 1, 0. If I look at the top point right up here, this makes a 90-degree angle, so this will be 90 degrees. And that point will be only y, right? So it will be 0, 1. Because again, the radius is 1 in both cases. Now, as I'm moving the different radiuses, I could have a radius here, I could have a radius there, radius here. As I'm going up from 0 to 90, my x values, the points here, if I drop them down, are going to decrease, right? So as I get really, really close to 90, like right there, it's going to be essentially 0, really close to 0. The y values, on the other hand, if I look at the y values, as I go from 0 up to 90, the y values go bigger. Something to keep in mind when we're looking at our angles. Now the main angles you need to know are the 30-degree angle one. You have a 45-degree angle one. And you also have a 60-degree angle one. As you'll see shortly, the 45 is obviously the same in the x and y. And the 30 and the 60 are actually related to one another. Now remember, in our unit circle, the radius is 1, so all of these hypotenuses would be 1. Let's look at that 45-degree angle first. The hypotenuse is 1, and I'm making it a 45-degree angle. It's opening up halfway between 45 and another 45, right? What that means is this side will also be 45. And the x and y values have to be the same length, right? Now you don't have to know exactly how to do this, but I'm going to show you how to get to the numbers. If you do the Pythagorean theorem, that's just a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Here I'm just going to say x twice, because they're the same. That equals 1 squared. And if you solve for x, you can figure out what the value is. X squared plus x squared is 2x squared equals just 1. Divide by 2 on both sides, I'm going to get x squared equals 1/2. And then I can take the square root of both values. The square root of 1 over 2 is, if you rearrange it, the square root of 2 over 2. Okay. That means that the x and y value at the 45-degree angle is square root of 2 over 2. Looking at the 30 and the 60-degree angle is a little trickier, but I'll show you how to derive it. Again, you don't need to necessarily know how to do this, but if you get stuck, you could try to do this to get the value. If I look at an equilateral triangle, that means the angles are the same. They're all going to be 60, right? Now let's say I take this triangle and I make a bisector. That's where you cut it in half. that means that this angle up here is going to be 30. Right? Remember again, hypotenuse is 1 because the unit's circle. If I wanted to solve for x and y in this case, essentially we're going to have each whole value of 1, so this whole side's 1, this whole side's 1. Since I cut it in half right here, half of 1, or this side, will just be half, or 1.5. So that's why I get my x value 0.5 in a 60-degree angle. The y value you could use Pythagorean theorem. Just to save time here, I'm going to do it. It's square root of 3 over 2. That's our y. You could do x squared or 0.5 squared plus y squared equals 1 squared, and you'll get to square root of 3 over 2. So now, how does this all tie into the unit circle? We're going to look at that first quadrant again up here. Remember, at 0 degrees, you have 1, 0 because it's all x. At 90 degrees, you have only y, so 0, 1. You have 45-degree angle again. Square root 2 over 2 is the x, square root 2 over 2 is the y, because again, if I drop down the line here, I have the same x and y distance. The 30 and the 60, in your 30-degree angle here, means that I have my bigger side on the x, because I didn't open it up as much. Square root 3 over 2 is bigger than the 1/2. Look at the previous slide on how I found this. The 60-degree angle is just reversed of the 30. Because if I'm 60, I'm a little closer to the y. The y value is bigger than the x. So your teacher will probably have to have you memorize these. Again, look at the previous slides on how I derived it. And you should be able to get to at least this quadrant. Now, if you want to figure out the other quadrants, it's actually pretty straightforward. Let's look at a 30-degree angle again. So here's a 30. I'm going to look at this angle right here, 150. The only way I found that is it's 30 less than the other side, 180. You notice that the values here are essentially the same. The only difference is my x value is negative. That's because I'm going to the left. The y value is still positive because I'm up. Okay, 45 degrees, same thing. It's going to be 45 away from 180, or 135. Again, x value, just the negative, y value is the same. And same thing for the 120. If I go down to the third quadrant, here's my 30 again in red. It's going to keep the line going down. 210 is just 180 plus 30 more. You notice that the x value is just negative. The y value is also negative because I'm going down in the y's. Same thing for 45 and 60. You just get 225 and 240. Finally, the fourth quadrant. Again, red's my 30. Let's go around it. It'll be 330 because it's 30 away from here. You notice the x value is the same because I'm going to the right. My y value, though, is negative because the y is going down. And you get the same thing for 315 and 300. The last thing to know in your unit circle is how to get these pi numbers right here. Essentially, this is some memorization. If you go from 180 degrees, it's pi, all the way to 360 will be, like 2 halves will be 2 pi right here, or you just say 0. If you cut it in half, you'll have pi over 2, because I go from pi right here, pi over 2, all the way to pi because it's cut in half, and then I go to 3 pi over 2 because that's half of 2 pi. If I want to zoom in on individual parts here, probably best to memorize these, to be honest, but the 30 degrees is pi over 6, 60 degree pi over 3, essentially half of that, pi over 4 is the middle. And then just relate that same angle to the other one. So look at pi over 6 here. If I go to the other quadrant, it's 5 pi over 6 because right here would be 6 pi over 6, because 6 over 6 is 1. Okay, Isabella, I hope this helps. If you have any questions, please email me.